Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Broken Brand. I'm your host, Stuart, and tonight we're going to do a quick documentary review of Amorth, the Exorcist. If you are not familiar with who Father Amorth is, he is the predominant lead exorcist in the Catholic Church for the past several decades. Um, they've made a movie about, loosely based on his life, or quote, a case called The Pope's Exorcist, which I did watch and I found it enjoyable. I'm a big Exorcist movie fan. I'm fascinated by the topic. I'm fascinated by the media interpretation of exorcism, how Hollywood and other creative people interpret and create stories around exorcism. I find it fascinating to see the connection from people who believe and people who don't believe, focusing on the same media and what they come up with. But with that being said, I'm a cessationist. Basically, what that means is I believe that the apostolic gifts, like healing, raising people from the dead, uh, casting out demons, things like that, that were granted to the apostles by Jesus, ended after the apostolic age. And along with that, some of the things that God allowed the demonic to do towards humans. I believe possession stopped then. Now, can I be wrong on this? Yes, I'm willing to accept that I'm wrong. However, I have not been convinced that this is not the case. So, I, my fascination with exorcism is more of understanding the fictionalization of theology, and if it really does exist, how would you combat it? If there was an exception made for someone allowed to be possessed in this day and age, what would that look like? How do we determine it? Things like that. So I always found it an interesting topic. This is not something I study a lot of. I'm just a fan of the movie genre. I've seen pretty much everything that deals with possession, from the original Exorcist to the Pope's Exorcist last year. Um, Possession, the Exorcism of Emily Rose, and just anything like that. I'm fascinated by. Um, I know that probably says a lot about me, but hey, that's who I am. So, with that being said, that's where I'm coming from. I should also add that, theologically pointing out, the reason I'm more of I don't think possession happens in this time and era is because after Jesus ascended to heaven, he sent the Holy Spirit. He sent the Holy Spirit to dwell within us. Now, if the Holy Spirit dwells within us, a demonic presence cannot dwell within us at the same time. Period. That's basic theology. So if a lot of people from a certain group of religious people seem to be possessed, that leads to two conclusions: that those possessions are false, or that they are not. Now, I don't want to condemn anybody, but those appear to be from that basic point that Paul points out in half his letters in the New Testament, that the Holy Spirit dwells within us. Those who are saved, the Spirit is sent and dwells within us. He says that multiple times. It's even alluded to in the Old Testament. So, I mean, we have to assume that the Bible's not lying 35 times throughout the Bible about this one topic. So, that's where I stand on that. But let's move along to this documentary. It is in Italian. Didn't catch that when I first started it. I just saw the word English on the bottom, didn't read the line above it where it said subtitle language English. I was like, oh, it's all in Italian. Okay, no problem. I'm fine with subtitles. I grew up watching imported anime. I've gotten used to reading subtitles and watching foreign movies, especially like Spanish and Korean movies. They're just phenomenal nowadays. They're incredible. Some of the best sci-fi is coming out of Spain. Some of the best just horror and monster movies are coming out of Korea and Japan, you learn to read subtitles pretty quick. But this is a documentary that's about an hour long. Was it 53 minutes? Yep. And it it's slightly, I thought it was going to be more of an on a one-on-one interview with Father Amorth, but it wasn't. It is. It's about, I would say, half the documentary is literally one-on-one questioning with Dr. Amorth, which is fascinating. You get to talk to the person who has done this position within the Catholic Church for centuries, decades, and he gives his perspective on things, and he gives a little perspective on some of the popes he's worked under. And they also interview a person that he cast out a demon of, who also went on to write a book and do the promotional tour and all that fun stuff. And that's kind of interesting because you get that other perspective. And then they spend the rest of it kind of exploring the rules and regulations of doing exorcisms, identifying true possessed and things like that in the eyes of the Catholic Church. They also bring in a Italian psychologist, psychiatrist, and neuroscientist. I forgot, it was a neuro something. Like he has a specialty in neurology of some sort. I forget exactly what it was, but he said he's experimented, outside the normal realm of neurobiology and psychiatry to examine things like this. Is this happening? What's going on? Can this be proven? But he came to the conclusion just because science can't prove that this isn't a psychological disorder does not prove that it is possession. I mean, they took a little bit of that scientific approach that science could possibly explain this, but it may or may not. I have a few very interesting theories that I'm not going to share just because I like to do crazy thought experiments and in my head just kind of taking a topic and running with it and see where my mind goes. It's just something I do for fun. But I do have some fun theories of what we could say about some of that scientific stuff. But I do think, in a roundabout way, what it comes down to is this documentary is a good insight into how the Catholic Church looks at legitimately from the people that work in the Catholic Church, like Father Amorth, and there's several other priests and cardinals that speak on the topic within the documentary. And it is a good thing to get that perspective from them, to see that. I still don't fully believe that. But I think that the power comes from Jesus, and Jesus, if it happens, the power comes from God, and God isn't indwelled within you, then you have no power over a person that's possessed. And ritual and dogma can't cast out a demon. It's the power of Christ and power of Christ alone. Period. End of the discussion. But that's my theological stance. So, all in all, this documentary, it's a fun, interesting kind of documentary if you're interested in the topic. It's kind of informative, but it's also kind of grounded. So I don't recommend people watching videos on exorcism and things like that. There's lots of that stuff out there. And I think I've heard people believe they don't watch it because they're afraid that it will invite a demon into them. I don't believe that. I know people that won't watch it because they're afraid it's going to mess with their head, and I fully believe that. Watching some of this stuff, it's not for everybody. I don't watch the real ones, or the ones that are supposedly real. I don't watch those. I watch the Hollywood versions and things like that, just because it's fascinating to me as a movie genre. But personally, I think this is a good documentary. I don't think they come to the right conclusion affirming possession and exorcism in this era of mankind, but I do think it is an accurate portrayal of how the Catholic Church perceives it and deals with it. On that note, it's excellent. So, if this is kind of something you're interested, it's a good short documentary. You will have to read subtitles, but that's okay. So, until next time, I love you all, and there's nothing you can do about it.